We're in Sif Gimel. Yeshua received the Torah from Moshe Shneimar. You will give from your glory upon him. All the congregation of children of Israel. The elders received the Torah from Yeshua. The people served God in all the days of the elders that they lived after Yeshua. And the word Yomi sometimes means days, and sometimes means years. In this particular case, it means only days. Well, because what happened, Chazal tell us that when Yeshua died, all of the country had been separated and all the Jewish people took over their land. So they didn't give Yeshua the proper type of a funeral that he should have received. And so God punished them that many of the elders only lived days after Yeshua and they died. And the result, there was a big vacuum and it was very difficult.
That was from the Shoftim.
Yeah. And then we had to come to the Shoftim, yes. It was hard to be found and to learn.
Did anyone find that? How long did the period of this scanning last after Yeshua? Yeshua died 25 or 2, couldn't say all. And
within days.
Everyone?
No. Pinchas was alive, and the Shofet after Kolev's son-in-law became the next Shofet after him. He was the Talmid Chacham. He figured out the 3,000 dinim they forgot during the days of mourning. He figured it all out.
So he
became the Shofet. Yeah.
Did he last till Shmuel or not?
He lasted 40. And another shape. You will look at the book of
What
Shofet.
tribe was Devorah from, by the way?
What?
This week's Haftarah. Devorah was from tribe. Yeah. Wasn't she from?
Wait, she from?
I was wondering which tribe, but
No, Kolev was from the tribe of Yehuda.
Yes.
And his son-in-law was also a tribe of Yehuda, perhaps. Because he was a half-brother or something like that. Anyway, let's get back to here.
Yeah.
That the people that saw all the great miracles that God had performed, Yeshua done for Israel, so therefore they had faith and they served God the way they should. Yeshua, but then the judges received the petition from Yeshua, Shneimar, he made Shoftim the time when the judges judged. After the Shoftim period was ending, the prophets received from the judges, I will send to you all my servants to the prophets. Chagis Chagim Malachi were the last of the prophets. They were already into the beginning of the second temple. Kibul Miyonavim, they received it from the other Navi. He was the last. Anchiknes Agdolo, Chagis Chagim Menachem. They learned from the last Navi, Anchiknes Agdolo. They're the ones that set up the tefillah that we have today, in the order we have it today. And they, since among them, at the beginning of their period, these were the prophets. So we can't possibly change it, because you have to have a halacha. At the beginning of the Megillah, it talks about they used to go and read the Megillah not only on Purim, but on the 11th, the 12th, 13th, or 14th day of Adar, as well as the 15th. To give reason why each day you think. And he says they changed the halacha that you could read it on all those days and not just on Shushan Purim. He says, no, you can't say that because it must have been set up in the first place, the Anshe Knesset Gedolot, and then you cannot change unless you're greater than the earlier sages in Torah wisdom and Torah and Minyan. Chochmah and Minyan. Chochmah means Torah knowledge, and Minyan, how many students you had. So we say there's nobody greater than the Anshe Knesset Gedolot because they were prophets. So they said three things. I will assume that these should be deliberate in judgment. This sounds familiar to you, gentlemen? You should not make judgments as to what a halacha is. It should sound familiar because it's like the first Mishnah in Avos. Midu Samidim Arbe, and instead of many students, Susiyog Torah, make a fifth Torah. All right, so that's the first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. That's latter part. So now, I think we'll hold this point, gentlemen, and next time we'll start from Dalet. And then we'll get into this. Put it down. In Silver, gentlemen, 4 lines from the bottom, Vivoy Semo. We are starting tonight's share from Omid Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. Share, and Gimel Omid Beis, 4 lines from the bottom, Vivoy Semo. If you wish, you can say, Now, you can repeat it after me, because the important thing is to get you to the point where you read yourself, and hopefully come to the point where you can make intelligence out of it and understand it. And then hopefully get to the point where you yourself can akapitio in the first instance. Make a laning, as we call it, making a laning, where you can learn new Gemara that nobody's ever taught you before. And if you persist in that long enough, you will do it, and then you will be able to go and teach others. And that's what is the whole responsibility of a Jew. If you wish, you can say. Repeat that after me, gentlemen. The boy Semo, and if you wish, my mafasas. What does it mean that there was an accident that permitted the marriage to take place 2 days, even 2 days before Chachamim had set up that a basula, a virgin lady, should get married on the fourth day of the week, and she get even married even on the second day of the week, and the rabbis permitted that.
So what's that little phrase you were saying?
My mafasonos, what do we mean because of an accident? There was a situation where his bread was baked, and his slaughtering had been slaughtered, and his wine had been mixed with water. In other words, if you postpone the wedding, monetary loss. And there died the father of the groom, or the mother of the bride. These are the two primary movements in ordinary weddings, where two young couples are getting married. The father provides for the wedding feast, and the groom ordinarily, and the mother helps her daughter prepare her hope chest. We put the dead body in a separate room, and we put the groom and the bride through the second stage of marriage. And they have sexual intercourse that's a mitzvah. To consummate the marriage is considered sexual intercourse a mitzvah. As the Tosfos said, a lady that was a virgin, and the one that breaks her hymen, or her husband, she loves him more than anybody else, because there's an extra special affection for him. This will lead to fulfilling the mitzvah of Puruhu, or Porish, and then they will separate from each other. And then Rashi tells us that they will bury the dead body, but no Shirish. And then they will first celebrate the 7 days of the wedding feast. If it seems strange to you that they just buried somebody and will celebrate the wedding, since they got married prior to the burial, the bride or groom, respectively, that lost their near relative, were not officially availing mourners until the burial. And so, since they were not mourners and they got married, then there is on them like a Yom Tov, a holiday where they celebrate for 7 days. And once the Yom Tov is stopped, you can't have avelos publicly. The Africa, and afterwards, after the first 7 days where you have this wedding celebration, they are married. You sit shiva for 7 days. And all those days, all 14 days, 7 days of the wedding feast and the 7 days of avelos, hu yoshein beinam. He sleeps between the men. He shana beinam, and she sleeps between the women. In other words, they don't have any sexual intercourse, even in the first week when they're celebrating their wedding, because that's what the Brisa says. And we don't hold to be described as a lady pretties herself up, or it could be described as the way she paints herself, or whatever she does to make herself look beautiful, all 30 days. But only the father of the groom or the mother of the bride. The Leika Ini, there's nobody else, the Torah, that will bother for them to prepare a wedding. Al the Itko, but otherwise, lo. We will not go through the wedding, but we will postpone it. All right, now that you know that, gentlemen, you can just listen, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to read the Dalet Amud Aleph. Avu Ifka Lo. You have the third Tosfos? Avu Ifka Lo, on the outer column. You have that? The third Tosfos, on Dalet Amud Aleph, on the left-hand side. How this young couple to get married. We cannot go and allow sentiment to stop us from fulfilling what they have to do.
Do you want me to record this, please?
Mother, you can get married. I think it's very important that you should understand some of the guidelines. The Balei HaTosfos are a great authority. All right, now any questions? Ask the question.
What if she's Nida and the same situation occurred and everything? And
the Gemara later will say if she's a Nida, you don't consummate the marriage at all. You get married right away and then
use it up.
And bury the dead body.
And then you go through that.
That's right.
Okay.
See, it's a very beautiful thing. I'm glad that you asked the question. You see, the more things, the more questions you can ask. And hopefully you get to the point where you'll ask me a lot of questions where, Baruch Hashem, I might even have an answer to it. I won't be upset. I will be very happy that you're that great. I will eat below, but contrary-wise, no. I'm reading the Tosfos. And now the Balei HaTosfos says, Huadin, the same law applies. If a person is an oval, a mourner, not for shark roving, because of other close relatives. So you see, according to the Gemara, it appears that it's only the mother of the bride or the father of the groom. But here, the Balei HaTosfos adds that any close relative, we would apply the same kind of a principle that we would marry them off, put the dead body in a separate room, and marry them off. Tamo. The Gemara, the Balei HaTosfos asked a wonderment. It's a question. The Omar Beperik Gimel, the Moed Katan. We say in the third chapter in the Gemara Moed Katan, the Gemara Moed Katan discusses all the laws of Avelos, of mourning. So therefore we use that as the source for our positions as to what the halacha is in mourning. And Daf on 23 on the first side, Mesa Ishto. What if a person, God forbid, his wife dies? Also, he's prohibited to remarry until there passes 3 of the major holidays, the Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. It appears here that a person has to wait that long of time before he can remarry.
Period from that? Is that 3 to 6 months, or what's the shortest period, or the longest period? The shortest period seems to be Shavuot and Sukkot.
Yeah,
maybe it's from Kippur, and Rosh Hashanah as well?
We're talking about the 3 major Ragolim.
Ragolim means legs, and
Ragolim, they used to make those pilgrimages to Yerushalayim to celebrate all these Jews.
The shortest sequence?
That would be Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, I'm telling you.
From spring to going to the Shavuos, and Sukkot.
All right, so the smallest time, according to this saying in the Gemara, appears to be about at least 6 months.
Yeah.
It's a long time to wait if a man's a wife died. Of course, some people wait a longer time.
That's what life expectancy is.
So there's a lot of questions. Let's go further. The ain't no bunny, but if he has no children, in other words, he's not yet fulfilled the mitzvah for who? Being fruitful and multiply. The Gemara brings the taste of the Mishnah and Yevamos, and the Gemara discusses it. What is the minimum requirement to fulfill the mitzvah for who? Being fruitful and multiply. And there's a dispute, like there always is. Beis Shammai holds that the minimal requirement to fulfill the mitzvah for who is 2 schorim, 2 males. And where do they learn it from? They learn it from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu had 2 sons, and so therefore, that's the minimum requirement. But that's not, the halachas like Beis Hillel, that says the minimum requirement to fulfill the mitzvah for who is having 1 male and 1 female. 1 zocher, 1 nekeva. And that is the halacha. Now, the yisra and nekeva in turn have to have children. Otherwise, that defeats the access to fulfilling the mitzvah. At any rate, a person, his wife dies, and prohibited according to that Gemara, or the most button, to get married until it passes 3 regalim, the 3 major holidays, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. The ain't no funny, but that's only ordinarily. But if he doesn't have no children, in other words, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah of Puravu, there is an obligation on every Jewish man to fulfill the mitzvah of being fruitful and multiply. You can't do this without a wife. And you're not permitted not to engage in the activity. Jew, as long as he's able, has to go and get married and have a wife and live with her. That's one reason. One reason is to be fruitful and multiply. And there's other reasons too, but we won't go into it right now. But for this purpose, right now. Mutter l'Yisrael Yalter. It's permissible to marry immediately. Now the word immediately, what does it mean? We will discuss it in the Valley of Thesis. Mishum Pir Ribo, in order to fulfill the mitzvah of being fruitful and multiply. This is something, halakha l'maaseh, something that's very important to understand. How long you have to wait. Of course, some people wait a long time, but that's if you got a long time to wait. All right? Then it goes on to say, if his dead wife left him little children, he is permitted also to marry immediately, in order to take care of the little children. He's got to have a lady to take care of the little children. Ordinarily, if a man has fulfilled the mitzvah of Puravu, and he also has no little children in the house, he could wait the 3 regalim until he remarries. But if there is a situation where he has not fulfilled the mitzvah for a ruler, he has little children, even if he has fulfilled the mitzvah, the children have to be taken care of. So in such a case, he's permitted to marry immediately. Again, we don't know what the word immediately means. Does it mean 1 minute? Does it mean 1 hour? Does it mean 1 day? Let's discuss it right now. And here we say, in this Gemara, here in Sisula, the Ibkalo, but it was contrariwise, other than the father of the groom and the mother of the couple. You don't have the wedding go through, but you postpone it. And it must mean, we're talking about a case, we're talking about a case where the groom has no children, because he's a young man. He's just first time getting married. We're talking about such things. You have to depend on your father, the father of the groom and the mother of the bride. Presumably, they're the first couple, the first time they're getting married. So the young man has not fulfilled the mitzvah for one question. Since we say the Lekut Torah, but the Gemara says there's nobody to bother for them. They're young yet, there's nobody to take care of, that they could have a wedding. Mashma, so it appears from here, to a Bocharari. We're talking about a young man that's never been married before. So how can you say that we're going to postpone the wedding? We learned in the Gemara that if you have no children, or if you have small little children, you're supposed to get married immediately. And why does the Gemara here say, if it's only if the mother of the bride or the father of the groom dies, any other close relative, you don't have the wedding, but you postpone it? That's a contradiction with the Gemara in Word Cotton that says that you're supposed to get married if you don't have any children. Everybody understand the question? Naftali, you understand the question? The Gemara in Word Cotton implies, among one of the reasons that you're supposed to get married immediately if you don't have children. You haven't fulfilled the mitzvah for a rule. And here it applies that if it's not the father of the groom or the mother of the bride, we postpone the wedding. We don't go through with it. And that seems to be a contradiction. Because it implies here that here you didn't fulfill the mitzvah for a rule, you should go through with it. So why does it just say otherwise no? It should be that they should go through with it right away. So it seems a contradiction. One Gemara against the other. They're equal authority. So what are we supposed to do? So the Malaitesis Baruch Hashem, the students of Rashi, they give a question, now they try to give an answer. Yesh Loma, there is to answer, there is to say. The La'alter, when we say immediately should get married if he has not fulfilled the mitzvah for a rule, or he has little children, la dafka, we really don't mean exactly immediately. The word La'alter, it doesn't really mean immediately. There's another word used, miyad, our interchange terminology. It doesn't mean really immediately. But what does it mean? It's permitted to get married after the 7 days of Shiva. That means
30 days with respect to the dead and any person.
Baruch Hashem. See, I tell you, gentlemen, you are tremendously asking very good questions. And thanks God I come to the Madrega now that I have my students challenging it. You don't just accept what's said. Always challenge, always try to understand. Don't accept. Yes.
If the situation is reversed, that's a widow, and she's the way that she's
A woman is. Oh, that's a different thing. A widow lady cannot remarry if her first marriage has been terminated for a period of 91 days. That's called the period of where we have to wait that amount of time in case she has been impregnated by her first husband, in order for purposes of understanding who the child she may have who's the father.
Is there such a period after
What?
Is there such a period after rape?
We're talking about well, it's not just that.
And how do you know whose father it is?
We're not getting into that at this point. We're talking about a wedding, a marry after a wedding. Now, let's get now there. Now, your question is well taken, Mr. Bruder. What about closhing? He said you're permitted to marry. Let's continue to take this. You're permitted to marry immediately. What does it mean immediately? Not exactly immediately. It means after 7 days. But to have sexual intercourse, you're prohibited until after 30 days. You marry after 7 days, but you wait until after 30 days before you have sexual intercourse. Now, the question you might ask, if you're marrying her after 7 days, and the mitzvah is because you want to fulfill the mitzvah for a vuh, if you wait until after 30 days, you're still not doing it right away. Because after all, the reason to fulfill the mitzvah for a vuh is not only to marry the lady, you have to live with her sexually in order to have children. You can live with a lady and not go to bed with her, and you'll never get children. I understand. It's probably, from your point of view, you've lived, Baruch Hashem, a long time, but a young man, it's pretty hard. A young lady, it's pretty hard. They haven't, they're passionate. It's very difficult. It's very nice for us, for the senior citizens, to talk about take your time, rush, but that's not the thing. It's all right. So this is what you get. Just like it is apparent after this, to show Yosef HaKohen. There, the Gemara talks about a case where the wife of a man named Yosef, and he said to her sister, now the wife of Yosef HaKohen died, he's mourning his wife, and her sister is at the funeral, and he says to her sister, Beis HaKpuros, right on the cemetery, go and take care of the children of your sister. This is like he's going to marry the sister, and presumably she's willing to marry him. And there is no time. And the body is, it's not, it just... He made such arrangements right at that point. Mourner, but she also was a mourner for the dead wife, or she was her sister. Lo Ba'alel, he didn't come upon her sexually until a long time. Again, the word long, what does it mean, long? So the Gemara asks, this what do we mean by a long time? 30 days. I see you're very happy, Mr. Bruder, very happy. It works out, everybody's... All right, fine. Miklau. So therefore we learn out from this generalization, the Kotzer Toklama, that he marries her before 30 days. Because we're only talking about he shouldn't have sex with her by 30 days. But he can, yes. But Tok Shimon, it appears even inside of 7 days. Right there at the cemetery. It appears, first we're going to have to say, it means, presumably it means right at the cemetery. He says, at the cemetery, he says, go and take care of your sister's little kiva, and within the 7 days, well, certainly it's prohibited, but also just like we see here, right in the Gemara, that after the body is buried, you have to wait at least 7 days. Masha Omar, law, above a comma. This is what he said to him. Masha Omar law, Beis HaKpuros, that abbreviation is Beis HaKpuros. What he said to his wife's sister at the cemetery, Lo Yozeh Kaniso, that wasn't a marriage. they're married. There was no marriage in having chuppah there. Although shidduchim ba'alma, it's only an engagement. So right there, it's an emergency situation. You can, with all the niceties. A lot of people want to wait for a long time, but you have little children. They got to be taken care of right away. And if they're willing to marry, we as the Rabbanan are permitting them to make arrangements to do it. The near Lari, and it appears to the Ri, the Vadai certainly also sheish lo bonim ketanim. The person that has little children, muterli so tochlam. Certainly it's permissible to marry within 30 days, less than 30 days. The master, just like we heard, by the case that happened by Yosef HaKohen, that there he made such arrangements to get married even within 30 days. Wow, when a person doesn't have any children at all, he has to fulfill the mitzvah. That's true. But he has no children. It's an urgent thing that the children have to be taken care of right away. Also, he's prohibited to marry her perhaps after 30 days. He's disagreeing with the prior opinion that you can marry within after 7 days. He says you should wait until 30 days.
Death and remarrying.
All right, I'll tell you. The Chumash tells us that a Kohen Gadol can only marry a psula, a virgin. Since nowadays there are no Kohanim Gedolim, only Kohanim Hadyotos, just ordinary Kohanim. An ordinary Kohen can marry an Almona. Or in this case,
A lady or
a widow. To marry a widow lady.
whose husband is one of the three categories.
Yes.
Okay.
He could marry a widow lady, or he can marry a lady who's never been married before. And even if she is a non-virgin. When we talk about an Almona, we're talking about a lady that's not a virgin usually. She's had a husband before, presumably they had sex before in the first marriage. When we talk about Almona, usually the word terminology for non-virgin, but use the terminology of Almona just to make it sound better. But really, it implies the same thing. A Kohen could marry a Ba'ula, a non-virgin. The only type of a non-virgin lady a Kohen cannot marry if she has a status of what we call a zona. A zona is a different type of an individual. A lady that has a zona is a Jewish girl that had sex with someone that she is not permitted to marry. For instance, she had sex with a non-Jew. That makes her a zona. Or that's without the benefit of marriage. Or she had sex with a mamzer. A Jewish, ordinary kosher Jewish girl is not permitted to marry a mamzer. Or she had sex with a nosim. That's a fringe group that's where later on we don't accept as being Jews because they were one of the 7 tribes, the Canaanites, that converted in the time of Yoshua, but they never really gave up idol worship until finally in the time of David HaMelech they were ostracized as being not legitimate Jews. And Evet Knani, a foreign Jew. These types, if they have sex with a Jewish girl, makes her a zona. And she is not, the rest of her life, prohibited to marry a Kohen. She could marry a Yisrael or a Levi. Yisrael Levi is not prohibited to marry a zona. They erroneously translate the word zona to mean a prostitute, but that doesn't mean that at all. And it's not to be applied that. But I know what you thought it meant, but that's not what we're talking about.
But you could have sex with anybody.
No. If a Jewish girl, not forbidden, I'm not advocating it, it's against the Torah, has sex with a kosher Jewish man, a Kohen, a Levi Yisrael, without the benefit of marriage, she's committing sins against God. She is fornication, which is against the commandment. She probably is a nidot too. That's also, you're not permitted to live with a lady with a nidot. She does not thereby become a zona. Even if she was a type that has illicit sex on a constant basis. If she never had it with the prohibited type, she can't marry, she's technically speaking still permitted to marry a Kohen if they so both wish to marry. A Levi in Israel she could marry without any question. No problem. This is the way it is. That's not. All right, gentlemen, let's get back to here. Now, what?
According to the present.
He's not permitted to marry a zona. This lady that had become unfit because she had sex with a non-Jew prior to the marriage,
or with a mamzer, or with a slave, or Evetani, or a Nosen, any of these groups. And he's not permitted to live with, he cannot permitted to marry a Gioris, a lady that was born a non-Jew, that was converted after 3 years and 1 day, because of he's not permitted to live with her, to marry her, because presumably after the 3 years and 1 day she had been violated by the Goyim. Unfortunately, the Goyim had very bad reputation in those days.
What is that?
3 years and 1 day is the cutoff period. If, God forbid, should never happen, a baby girl is violated by a person, and the hymen grows back within the 3 year period. So even if she's been violated, it grows back. After 3 years, they no longer grows back, which remains a non. We'll get into all these halachas later on in the Gemara. The Kohen cannot marry a grusha, a divorced lady. It's in the Chumash. And also, a lady that went to Litza is a lady that is an almona, but a special type of an almona. An almona that was married to this man's brother, married to a man that she had no children with. And when he died, the Torah gave an option to surviving brothers that had been alive during the time that this brother was alive, to either liyabim her, that means live with her and make them her their wives, or give her a chalitza. In the time of Yochanan and Zakkai, it was decreed that they always have to give chalitza. And chalitza is a form of divorce. The surviving brothers refuse to marry her, and thereby she then becomes permitted to marry anybody else that wishes to marry her, and she wishes to marry them. Well, the story of Ruth is a little different. In the first place, Boaz was not a Kohen. There was not that problem with a Kohen. A Jew can marry, he shicks it and converts, become a convert. If she's a Geras Tzadekis, she can marry such thing. An example of that is Ruch in the story in the book of Yoshua. She was, according to one opinion, she had been a prostitute. Now, the word sona here means prostitute, for 40 years, from the age of 10 to the age of 50, during the time the Jewish people were wandering in the wilderness. And she was living in Yericho, Jericho. And at the end of, that's one opinion, another opinion, she was an innkeeper. Whatever it was, the opinion, according to that opinion, at the end of 40 years, when the Jewish people came there, she greeted the two spies that Yoshua sent out to spy out Yericho. That was Kolevik and Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron. These two spies were sent out, and she saved their lives. She didn't turn them over to the Aaron, she saved their lives. And in turn, they promised to save her life and the life of her family, although they left in her house. When the city would be destroyed, her family would be spared. They were. And later on, Rochel Azona converted to become a Jewish person. And she married the leader of the Jews. And from them they had daughters. From them were descended many kings of Israel and Yoshua and Yechezkel, the prophets, among others. It's a small world. So Yoshua was a descendant Yosef Atzadik, who was not a Kohen or a Levi. The Levi could also marry him. So to get back there, all right, gentlemen, let's go start with the big line, the first big line, Venir Lari, the Pierce Lari. I'll go back a couple lines because we may have lost track with it. Venir Lari, the Pierce Lari, the Vadai certainly, Shmuel Bonim Katani, a person that has small little children, it's permissible for him to marry within 30 days of the death of the close relative. Kidamashna, Ba'uda, the Yosef Atzadik. Like the case by Yosef HaKohen, you're right down the cemetery. He told the sister of his dead wife to take care of the children. The person has no children at all. The reason that he's getting a thing is because he hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah, but he has small children to take care of. He should be prohibited to get married until after 30 days. But Paul, since he can't have sex, within 30 days. And so it appears to be the rule of law. And we have a tractate called Simchos, joys, literally. But actually it's not talking about joys, it's talking about avelos. So they use a euphemism about it. You understand? So the Sichos Simchos Perik Zayin, the sign we learn in the Brisa, what do we say this is so Kishish Lo Bonim Gedolim? When he has big children, that you have to wait longer. But if he has no, or he has little children, he's permitted to marry somebody else after 30 days. So mashma, it appears from that Gemara, according to the Reed, the officer that's prohibited it's prohibited even to get married within 30 days, even if you postpone living with the new wife until after 30 days. So there's a dispute. Baruch Hashem, you should understand, gentlemen, by now that there's always disputes in every facet you can imagine. Let's go right there. Even though he has small children, he's permitted to marry within the 30 days. Regardless of that, we take the terminology after 30 days, because he has no children. That's what the Re wants to say. Rabbeinu Tam, Rabbeinu Tam wants to say, if he has no children, in other words, he has not fulfilled the mitzvah for even to have sexual intercourse with his new wife, he can have within the 30 days, after the 7 days. Mishum Pe'eribo, before multiply. So you see, there's a dispute among the Bali Atestas. How long you have to wait? Everybody admits that you don't have to wait. Shlosh Regolim, three Yom Tevim, because either they have no children or they have small little children that have to be taken care of right away. It's a dispute. When can you first have sexual intercourse? Well, one authority wants to say you have to wait until after 30 days, and the Rabbeinu Tam says, no, you can have it after 7 days. What the halacha is, we have to look in the Shulchan Aruch, and we'll see what they paskin in the halacha. But the Rishonim here, they argue with each other, so you shouldn't be upset. I mean, this is nothing new. The Gemara is always constantly, there's always have people, Beishan, Beisila, always arguing. So sometimes they agree. There's 18 cases where they do agree. But ordinarily, they argue all the time. He, the Simchos, in the case of Simchos, how can Rabbeinu Tam argue when the Gemara appears to say that you have to wait until after 30 days? So how is he going to explain that Gemara? You mean like show Rabbeinu Tam, he was the Gadol Hador. He was the grandson of Rashi, and he was the Gadol Hador in his generation. He was born in 1100, and he lived to 1170. He was the greatest Talmud Chacham in his generation. We can't argue with Gemaras. In Simcha, Elum Yerushavas, the Perushon. He says the Gemara in Shivas cannot be answered correctly according to his explanation. He can't really explain that because that seems to contradict his position. And Simchos appears to say you have to wait until after 30 days. And it appears to be Yeshlo, Bonim Katanim, that if he has small children, it's permissible for him to get married. In here, now the wife is porno because they take care of his little children. Even though it's possible he could marry another lady that's not mourning, like the case that was quoted in the Gemara, Yosef HaKohen. Now, also, the new wife he's marrying was a mourner from her sister. But from here, it's not so much a proof, one way, that he could marry somebody else. That's not necessarily so. The Shema, perhaps Shani also, perhaps there the case of Yosef HaKohen was a different type of case. Why? She would have more mercy on the children of her dead sister than another lady. It's a strange lady. So there's another reason why he should marry the sister of the dead wife, because besides the fact that they love each other, she would have more rachmanis and on the sister of the children of the dead sister.
Why couldn't she have taken care of the children at least for 30 days?
It's very nice for you to go and make arrangements for somebody else to live their life.
Yeah, but what's the hurry? Why does he have
What's the hurry? The kids have to be taken care of now, and he wants to keep on taking care of them.
So she could have taken care of them where she was living.
Maybe she's got different arrangements. Maybe she wants to get married to, and she don't want to go be used as a housekeeper or a babysitter. She wants a husband. Listen, you want to get married? It's got to be a package deal. I got to have a husband. You want me to take care of your kids? Fine.
I got to have a husband. You can't just make unilateral arrangements and say, you're going to go and take care of your sister's kid. What kind of is a dictatorship? A woman to marry you just because it's good for you? Maybe it's got to be good for her, too. I'm surprised you asked the question.
Yeah, a man needs a man, and a woman needs a man, and a man needs a woman.
That's the way God made
She
it.
waited so long, she could wait a little bit.
She's not getting any younger. She's not getting any younger. Not getting any younger.
She could be 18.
Well, it could be. Maybe she's not getting any younger. Her sister died already. Who knows if she'll ever get a husband? You got a need. I got a need. If we make a shidduch, fine. I don't understand why you got to make it. If the whole world's got to serve Yosef HaKohen, and everybody else has got to do what he wants to do. Who made him God?
You got to like yourself first.
If she wants to do it, fine. But after 30 days, he still needs a wife. He still needs somebody to take care of the kid. She wants to make sure that she got a shidduch.
People are not 75. They are young people.
I'm afraid you forgot a few of the facts of life. When you're young, you know. You're not,
Like what you are now. With young people.
yeah, she needs a husband. She needs a husband.
She waited so long, she could wait another day.
It's very well for you to say that. What do you do? All right, let's go further. You find it very interesting, don't you, gentlemen? I'm telling you. See, it's beautiful. That's why we're learning this tomorrow. With all these tastes, it's so beautiful that you have to learn it. It's just wonderful. It's a key to Shas. It's not. Even though we learn in the Mishnah, the Perkacholis, in another Gemara, in Yevamos, Mem Aleph, Woman Aleph, all ladies should go to the first stage of marriage, Mi'amona, except a widow lady, Yiprei evils, because of mourning. Lo mafli, meaning, you don't make any differentiation. Masma, it appears, she's prohibited even if a person that has small children, when she is a mourner. Is that a contradiction? Make a differentiation. Without this, asuro. A widow lady is prohibited to marry right away, like what you mentioned before. It's you have to wait Gimel Kadoshim, 3 months between the ending of the first marriage until taking on a new marriage. Mishum Avkona, there's the word, Avkona. Avkona means to wait, to see, to discern who the father, if she's pregnant, is of any offspring she may have. But not necessarily because she's a widow lady that you have to wait. It's just because we have, in the case of a widow lady, there's a special halacha because she already had a husband, and we have to discern if she is pregnant or not. And in 3 months' time, it will be recognizable if she, in fact, she is pregnant. And Rabbi Tam says, "Ka'afilo meiso avi ve'imo." Even if a person lost, God forbid, his father and his mother. Now, ordinarily, people must be aware of this. And when a person loses his father and mother, it's more stringent, the laws of Avelos, than anybody else. You have to mourn them for a whole year. Well, you mourn other people for a whole year too. We usually have when you stay cottage for 11 months. By father and mother, you wait a whole year before you go to a happy occasion. Whereas by if somebody else, close relative dies, after 30 days you can go to a celebration, like a wedding, for instance. He says, Tom said, even his father and mother died, he permits the person to get married after 30 days. He permits that. We said also in the Gemara in Mud Cotton that says all the laws around Avelos, not couple days on days. Kol HaMesim, on all other cases where relatives died, Nichnas Lebeis HaMachar Lamed. You could go to the house of a celebration after 30 days. Like, God forbid, a person loses a brother or a sister. But after his father and his mother, look inside. After Yud Beis Chodoshim, after 12 months. So you have to show more respect for your parents than for anybody else. You
Can't marry his mourning.
You have to mourn them. You're not supposed to go to Beis Hamishta, a house of a celebration, as a guest. What people do nowadays, they act as a servant. They're not really. They use subterfuge to get around it sometimes.
Is that right?
We have to go into the halacha man. But anyway, this is what the halacha, basic halacha is. Of course, any meeting, what's that the case with Shara? Other types of celebration that you should avoid
until after 12 months. Probably Esau, but to marry a lady, Shehi Mitzvah Yisir, that is an extraordinarily expensive, one of the biggest of them all. Because without Jews, we have no Jews. Without marriage, you don't have any Jews. You don't have any. We say that they put more of Shekhinah away from Israel. The right presence of God, because God forbid it should never happen. If the Jewish people are reduced to less than 22,000 Jews, the presence of God goes away from them. At any rate, Mishra Sarah, Mutter, he permits you to get married after 30 days, even after you lose the father and mother. Thomas gives a heter in that respect. Even if he has children. Remember I told you before, we mentioned before, the reason a person's got to get married right away in the beginning of the case is either he didn't have children, he didn't fill the mitzvah for a fool, or he had small children. But I told you also, there's other reasons why a person's got to get married besides having children. Now we're going to learn another reason. Shul, even if you have children, Rishum Shenamar, there's a pasuk Koheles, Yud Aleph. This pasuk also applies to learning Torah, but we use these for both things. In the morning you should sow your seed. We're in Sif Gimel. Nemar V'Nasato, you give from your glory upon him. They feel in order all the congregation of children. The elders received the Torah from Yeshua. The people served God all the days of Yeshua, and all the days of the elders that they lived after Yeshua. Now the word Yomi sometimes means days, and sometimes means years. In this particular case, it means only days. Well, because what happened, Chazal tell us that when Yeshua died, all the country had been separated, and all the Jewish people took over their land. So they didn't give Yeshua the proper type of a funeral that he should have received. And so God punished them that many of the elders only lived days after Yeshua and they died. And the result, there was a big vacuum, and there was